Hello, hello. We're back again, and we are going to continue on with our Adventure Park Trigger Refactor. Last time we knocked out on before update, so today we're going to take a look at on after update. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what's going on here. So here we're looking for an open date that is less than today. It wasn't active, its activity has changed and it's not active, so it's not here. And it doesn't have, let's see, it does have an activated date. So we know from our previous one, we had some old logic that would set this inactivated date on update. So now it looks like we're finding that same one because this is the same criteria. The date is less than today, it is inactive, it's become inactive, and it has an inactivated date. So this one basically carries on the work that started in our before update context. One thing that I want to fix here, just because it's something that there's a couple things that stand out. First, we're passing in a new map. Why? I don't know. It's kind of pointless. We don't really need it. We're mapping over the key set to get the ID, and then we use the ID to get the list item. It's pointless in my book. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's make this a list. We'll call this new parts. The next thing is we call this old map. And that's kind of weird. It's not really helpful. It's not a great variable name, right? I mean, we kind of can figure out what it is in context. It's not that hard, but it's not a great variable name. These are actually old parks. And if you wanted to say old parks by ID, that'd be fine too. Sometimes I do it one way, sometimes I do it the other way. When I do a map in general, I'll always put the key information inside the variable name. So we can do that here. The next thing we need to change is that now this is no longer a map. So this is going to be a adventure park. And this is going to be a new park. And we don't need this logic. We can just delete that. Can delete that. Delete that. And delete that. Okie dokie. Now, were we premature? This is definitely a convention I would typically follow. But here we can see that we are using those new park map to find the correct park of interest. So, maybe this is a case where it made sense when we first started, like that's our normal convention, but maybe we actually do need that map. So I'm actually going to undo this code. And this is one of those great things about version control is you have this, you can make mistakes, you can make an assumption or do things by convention, find out you're wrong, and then discard changes. And if we wanted to be confident, we can just make sure, deploy and save. We didn't really deploy anything, so I'm not worried about this at all. There we go. Okay, that's good. So let's do this in a different way for fun. This is something I'll do too, is I don't like to unbox this multiple times. I don't want to reach into that map and get the same thing because this is duplicate code, right? We're doing the same thing over and over again. So let's go ahead and create a new variable called new park, and we'll take our new map and we'll get our park ID. And we need to get the old park from the old map, get park ID. And now we'll just replace all these bits of code with almost all of them. Oops, chill, baby. There we go. Let's try this again. Not you, but replace you, you, and you. Very good. And we'll replace this. Okay. Run that. Very good. Let's call this new parts by ID, and we'll call this old parks by ID to make the names a little bit better. Park ID, it's okay, I think. So, okay, that's looking a little bit better. So now let's go ahead and look at what we're doing with this, because it's it's likely the case that since we're moving the logic out of the batch job, we would probably also want to move this out. But we might want to leave it here. Who knows? Maybe we just let the batch job do the activation and then we keep this trigger in place so that it runs as a consequence of that batch job running. All right, so park IDs. Park IDs, this is not a great variable name, right? We're talking about a very specific kind of park. We're talking about a park that has been deactivated. So really what we're talking about is deactivated park IDs. That gives more context. We know what it is that we're looking for here. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do this, and we will improve variable names to provide better context. All right. The next thing here is this, this not null. We can see that we're initializing this as a set. It's not being nulled out in any way. There's no risk of this being null. So this is just noise. Okay. Now we're looking for parks of interest. So we can imagine that, people that want, like the adventurers, the people that want to go on different hikes or go to these adventure parks for whatever, they're going to register their interest maybe before or after it's closed. And that way, as a business rule, it might help people understand, the business understand how much interest there is in a certain particular park. And maybe if they don't have a certain amount after a period of time, they'll decommission it or improve the marketing, whatever it is that needs to happen to generate more interest. So what we're doing here is we're finding the parks of interest that are related to that park and we're deactivating them. Okay. The first thing we should notice is that we're not really filtering based on which ones are inactive. So if we already have parks of interest that are inactive, then we don't need to pull those back from our query. And active equals false. So that'll help a little bit. And the next thing we should notice is that this is breaking our design because this code should live in the handler. This is in the helper. This shouldn't be handler code. We use the handler to partition and create data we need and to call into the helper. So we're going to extract this into its own method. And we'll call this method from the helper. It doesn't need to return anything. This is a public void. Public static void deactivate related parks of interest. All right. Now, if we looked at this logic, we are passing in the old park IDs. Why? Why not just use the new ones? If we did this the way that it's stated here, we're going to have to pass in two maps, and I don't really see any reason to do that. So what we'll do is we'll replace this here, go back to our handler, and get our let's double check here. We're using this to find the date. Okay. And okay. It's funny. Let's go ahead and remove this real quick. And we're going to come back into the handler and look at this code. Because the weird thing is we've done this work to create these, to put these IDs, and then we're not using them. So what really should happen is that in the where clause, we're not using the old map, we're using the ones we found. Is there a reason to use the old map? No. We just found all these different park IDs. And these are the ones we want to act on. We don't want to act on all of them that were part of the update. So the previous query would have pulled in too much data, and we weren't checking ones that were inactive. So this will be a little bit better to pull in just the parks we care about, the ones that have been recently deactivated, because we have to assume that this automation is already run for other data. And if it hasn't, it's still not part of this automation. It's part of a data cleanup initiative. Okay. Now the next thing we need is, it looks like we need to get the correct inactivated date. So do we really want to pass in a separate list for this, or can we simplify it? A method that has too many variables is not as easy to work with. So if we can simplify it, we should. And it's pretty simple, right? Like this could be a map. Instead of passing in just a set, we could have the ID by date. And if we did that, then when we found those and we were going through them, we would look at the park's adventure park, we would get that value, and it would be the inactivated date already. So this is a little bit cleaner. And what we'll do is we'll create a new map, ID, and this is a date or date time. Let's double check. It is a date. All right, so these are deactivated date by park ID. Okay. And now we'll do this and we'll put the park ID and the new park dot inactivated date. And then down here, we can use this dot key set to get our IDs, and we can use this to get the date. Okay, so now when we call this method, when we create this method, all we have to pass in is this data structure that we created. This goes away. We'll fix that in a second. Let's do this. So we'll plop that in there. This needs to be our check, and that should make this no longer used. And then we will call the adventure park trigger helper dot deactivate regular POIs, but we need to pass in our newly created data structure. And there we go. Easy enough, right? There were a few logical leaps, and I hope I didn't go too quick, but we'll have more opportunities to go through this in the future. Work through these yourself. You know, with any of the stuff that we go through in these videos, it's really helpful when you're getting hands-on experience with the code and working your way through it. And you can come back to this video and review parts and see where we ended up. And that sort of challenge of working with it is going to be very beneficial for developing your refactoring skills. But you know what we really did is we just kept simplifying. It's like what needs to happen. Let's use less variables, not more variables. We don't want to add a bunch of variables and then keep track of what we're using. And you know, it's just pointless, right? That adds to the complexity of the code. Even if it doesn't make it truly complex, it just adds complication to the code. One variable here where we had a map does it all. So that is far more desirable for our code. So let's go ahead and save it and let's go run our tests. And while this is running, let's just kind of think back through what we did. So when we moved this here, we found that we could pass in a single map. We had our key set that we used to find the adventure parks. We added the inactive field to the query because we don't need ones that are already deactive for whatever reason. I mean, who knows how many there are, right? And some of them, we can imagine that the park of interest would be inactive for a variety of reasons. Then, after we set this as true, to get the inactive date, we reuse the existing variable that we constructed during the conditional entry of our method to do what exactly we wanted to do, which is get the park date. So we have a deactivated dates by park ID. We find the park of interest adventure park, which gives us the park ID, and then that gives us the date that we stamp onto the park of interest. All right. Now, park of interest, the last little small change we're going to make here is something that we're all very familiar with in this domain, we're going to pretend. And so instead of calling it a park of interest, we're just going to call it a POI. And we're going to change this to POIs to update. Or because there's that spelling error there, we're going to say POI list to update. And that's it. Now we are done with the handler, but we need to double check our testing. So what we're going to do in the next video is that before we wrap a bow on this handler and helper, we're going to need to make sure our testing is complete and we're not missing anything. And then after that, we need to still deal with this service appointment handler that's breaking our design by being called directly from the trigger. You know, this should be incorporated with the handler and the helper. So let's go ahead and commit our code and restore design of handler helper and simplify logic with improved data structure. Bing, bop, boom, 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 bop, bam. Push that in there. And there we go. All right. So I think we will be close to wrapping up the handler and helper. We should knock that out in the next video by improving the testing. And then we'll need to still do our service appointment handler. So we still have a few things to do. We need to work back on the batch jobs that we talked about in the last video. We're getting close though. We're getting close to wrapping up at our first refactor of the adventure park trigger. I hope this was fun and interesting, and I'll talk to you later.